Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling something really important, the mental health of our children. We're going to be looking at a framework that helps us understand what good mental health actually looks like, what the risks are, and, maybe most importantly, how we can help build that all-important resilience.
So, let me start by asking you a question. When you hear that word, mental, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Let's be honest, for a lot of us, it immediately brings up something negative, right? Something linked to serious illness. And that perception can really get in the way of seeing the bigger picture.
But here's the mindset shift we need to make. Think about it this way. Just like physical health, everyone has mental health. It's not something that only shows up when there's a problem. Every single child has it, all the time, and it needs to be nurtured.
Okay, so if we're all on board that every child has mental health, what does it actually mean for them to be mentally healthy? Before we go any further, let's get the language right.
It's not just one big, scary category. It's actually really helpful to think of this on a spectrum. On one end, you've got mental health problems. These are things like sleep issues or anxiety. They're definitely distressing, but less severe. Then, on the other end, you have mental health disorders, which are more serious conditions that often need specialist help. See the difference?
All right, so enough about the problems for a second. Let's flip the script. Instead of just focusing on what can go wrong, what are we actually aiming for? What does a thriving, mentally healthy child even look like?
Well, this framework gives us 5 key things to look for. A mentally healthy child can build good relationships, they're growing and developing, they can play and learn like they should, they're building that moral compass, and their stress levels are pretty much what you'd expect for their age. And, this is super important. Context is everything. What's totally normal for a 5-year-old is going to be way different for a 15-year-old, right?
Okay, now we've got to look at the other side of the coin. What are the challenges, the things that can throw a wrench in a child's mental well-being? Understanding these risk factors is key to knowing where we need to step in and offer support.
So we can actually group these risks into 3 main buckets. First, you've got factors that are in the child themselves, things like their temperament or maybe a physical illness. Then there are factors in the family, which could be anything from conflict to abuse. And finally, you've got the wider community, things like poverty or discrimination. It really shows how it's never just one thing, it's a whole ecosystem.
And if you want to see just how much those community factors matter, check this out. Look at this data. 55% of kids with conduct disorders are living in social sector housing. Compare that to just 24% of the general kid population. That is a huge gap, and it just screams that there's a powerful link between a child's environment and their mental health.
But here's the thing, and this is maybe the most fascinating part of this whole topic. Having those risk factors, it's not a life sentence. It doesn't guarantee a bad outcome. We all know children who have been through so much, facing incredible adversity, but they thrive.
Which of course brings us to the million-dollar question. Why? What is the magic ingredient? What makes one child struggle while another, in the very same tough situation, manages to pull through?
Well, the answer can be summed up in one powerful word: resilience. This is that secret sauce, the thing that helps kids weather life's storms. Now, resilience isn't just about being tough or gritting your teeth. It's way more than that. Think of it as a collection of protective factors. These are the strengths a child has on the inside and the supports they get from the outside that together boost their ability to cope when life gets hard. It's almost like a psychological immune system.
So what are these protective factors we're talking about? Well, some of them are internal, part of who the child is, like having a naturally easygoing temperament or a great sense of humor. But so many of them are external. Things like having a solid, supportive relationship with at least one parent, having good friends, or positive experiences at school.
And this quote right here, this points to something huge. It's about how a child thinks, the ability to actually process what happens to you, to find some meaning in it and learn from it, instead of just getting stuck. That is a massive part of being resilient.
Okay, so we've got the signs of good health, we know the risks, and we've talked about the incredible power of resilience. So the big question now is, what do we do about it? How can we actually help? Well, the game plan for promoting mental health really boils down to three key things. First, educate and prevent. This means giving kids the words to talk about their feelings and running things like anti-bullying campaigns. Second, build supportive communities. This is all about creating things like support groups for parents or making sure schools have really strong, positive policies. And third, and this is a big one, develop healthy policies on a larger scale, advocating for things like safe housing and community spaces for everyone.
And here's the most important takeaway from all this. This is not just a job for specialists. It's not just for doctors or therapists. It is on all of us. Teachers, parents, coaches, neighbors, literally anyone who is in a child's life has a part to play in building them up and fostering that resilience.
So, I want to leave you with this one final thought to take with you. Think back to that list of protective factors: a sense of humor, a trusted adult, positive experiences. What is one small thing you could do, maybe even today, to strengthen one of those factors for a child in your orbit? Because every single one of those small actions adds up. It helps build a more resilient next generation. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.